Middle-earth is a realm of deep memory, a land where the past never truly dies, but lingers like mist over ancient barrows and forgotten ruins. Its histories are woven with tales of mighty kings, noble elves, fire-breathing dragons, and the eternal struggle between light and shadow. But for every song that was sung and every legend etched in the scrolls of lore, there are others, whole peoples and civilizations, that have faded into silence, vanished, erased by the long march of time, by war, by exile, or by their own unquenchable pride. Today, we turn our gaze to the lost races of Middle-earth, those who once walked proudly beneath the stars of Arda, who shaped the world in its earliest days, yet are now no more than whispers in the wind or ruins beneath the earth. Who were they? What fate befell them? And why did even the elves, the keepers of ancient memory, allow their stories to slip into shadow? Together, we continue our journey into the forgotten depths of Tolkien's legendarium, to seek the voices long silent and to remember those whom time chose to forget. The Drúedain, wild men of the woods. Among the strangest and most ancient of mortal peoples were the Drúedain, known in later days as the Woses, or wild men. Though of the race of men, they were unlike any other among the Edain. Short and broad, with deep-set eyes and weathered features, their appearance drew mockery from some, yet behind their rugged forms lay a people of rare gifts. They possessed an uncanny perception, almost a second sight, and an instinctive awareness of the land around them. Their senses were sharp, and they spoke little, preferring silence and solitude. The Drúedain crafted great stone figures called watchstones, believed by many to hold warding power, perhaps even possessing a rudimentary awareness. These sentinels stood guard in the wilderness, watching long after their makers had vanished. In the elder days, they dwelt in Beleriand and allied themselves with the Haladin, one of the noble houses of the Edain. But the encroaching darkness of Morgoth and the bitterness of the First Age drove them into deeper seclusion. They mistrusted elves and men alike, and by the Third Age, they were found only in the remote Drúedain forest near the White Mountains. When the War of the Ring came to Gondor, it was the Drúedain who guided the Rohirrim through hidden paths, enabling the riders to reach the Pelennor fields in time. But even their valor was not enough to halt their fading. They were a people slipping quietly from history, not by sword or siege, but by deliberate retreat from the world of men. The Petty-dwarves, outcasts of the deep places. Before the rise of Khazad-dûm, before Erebor or the Iron Hills, there were others. The Petty-dwarves, called Noegith Nibin in Sindarin. They were a secretive and diminished folk, cast out by their greater kin for reasons lost to time. Their stature was smaller, their frames more bent, and their spirits often bitter. Shunned and forgotten, they eked out a living in the shadows of Beleriand, carving homes in hollowed hills and abandoned ruins. The Petty-dwarves were skilled in stonework and cunning with traps, but their bitterness toward elves and men ran deep. Among their dwindling number was Mîm, the last known of their kind. In the First Age, he briefly found uneasy refuge with Turin Turambar, but their alliance was fraught with mistrust. Ultimately, Mîm's treachery brought ruin, and he was slain by Húrin, Turin's father, in a final act of vengeance. With Mîm's death, the line of the Petty-dwarves came to an end. No songs remember them, no tombs bear their names. A race broken by exile and crushed by grief, their legacy now lies buried beneath the very stones they once shaped. The Avari, the unwilling. In the first days, when the elves first awoke beneath the stars of Cuiviénen, the Valar summoned them to the west, to Valinor, the blessed realm. Many obeyed the call, setting forth on the long journey across Middle-earth. These became the Eldar, the Elves of Light. But not all were willing. Some chose to remain behind. These were the Avari, the unwilling. Whether out of fear, distrust, or a love of the starlit forests, they rejected the summons and vanished into the wild. Hidden in the shadowed woods and deep glens of Middle-earth, the Avari lived apart from their kin. In time, they splintered into countless scattered tribes, and their languages and customs diverged beyond recognition. Little is known of the fate of the Avari. Some may have mingled with other elven kindreds. Others perhaps fell into darkness or faded utterly from the world. Even the wise of Rivendell and Lothlorien speak of them only in hushed tones, as a memory of a choice made long ago, a choice that led to obscurity instead of glory. They were the kindred who never saw the light of the two trees, never beheld the splendor of Valinor. When the summons of the Valor rang out across Middle-earth, calling the elves westward, these chose instead to remain. They became the Avari, the unwilling. Their fate diverged from the Eldar, the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri, and in that divergence, their story was all but lost. Scattered across the lands of Middle-earth, the Avari lived apart, often in isolation, and grew increasingly secretive and mistrustful of outsiders. Time wore away at their unity, their languages fragmenting into dialects long forgotten, their customs fading into forest shadows. Tolkien hints that some Avari eventually mingled with the Sylvan Elves of Lothlorien and Greenwood the Great, later known as Mirkwood, but many more simply vanished into the deep, uncharted woods and forgotten glens. Their names are not preserved in the songs of Rivendell or the libraries of Númenor. They left no great cities, no glowing works of art or craft. Only whispers remain, of ghostly figures glimpsed among ancient trees, of voices in the wind that speak no known tongue. They were once proud and free, but history has passed them by. Their legacy, if it survives at all, is buried in the wild places of the world, where memory is moss-covered and time runs slow. Before we journey deeper into the forgotten chapters of Middle-earth, if you enjoy exploring the lost stories of Tolkien's world, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you. The Black Númenóreans, kings turned shadows. The Númenóreans were once the greatest of all men, long-lived, wise and mighty. Their island kingdom, gifted by the Valor, was a beacon of civilization in a darkened world, but not all among them remained faithful. As the shadow of Sauron fell across Númenor, pride turned to arrogance, and reverence turned to rebellion. Under the Dark Lord's insidious influence, a faction of the Númenóreans rejected the Valor and embraced domination, sorcery, and deathlessness. These were the Black Númenóreans. When Númenor was drowned beneath the sea in the Akallabeth, the downfall, some of these corrupted survivors fled eastward, settling along the southern coasts of Middle-earth. There they built strongholds such as Umbar, carving out realms of cruelty and power. They enslaved local peoples, allied with Haradrim tribes, and carried out dark rites in Sauron's name. Their hatred for the faithful, and for Gondor in particular, endured across generations. It is whispered that some Black Númenóreans became sorcerers of great renown, and some may even have been counted among the Nazgûl, the Ringwraiths, though Tolkien left this veiled in mystery. But time, as ever, eroded their legacy. Their bloodlines grew thin, their power fractured by greed and internal strife. By the time of the Third Age, they were reduced to little more than pirates, slavers, and mercenaries, their ancient glory long since buried beneath layers of bitterness and decay. Once they had been kings who defied the Valor. Now, they are but footnotes in the chronicles of Gondor, shadows clinging to the coasts of history, the forgotten East, realms beyond the map. Tolkien's maps, as we know them, chart the familiar lands of the West, Eriador, Rohan, Gondor. But beyond the misty mountains and greenwood, the great lies a world vast and unexplored, Rhûn, Khand, and Harad, and in those far reaches, far from the gaze of elves and dwarves, dwelt peoples and cultures now shrouded in shadow. We know them as the Easterlings and the Haradrim, foes of Gondor and allies of Sauron. But who were they truly? What names did their kings bear? What gods did they honor beneath alien stars? What stories did they tell? Stories we shall never hear. Tolkien only hints at the depth of their histories. Noble lineages perhaps older than Gondor, empires that may have rivaled Númenor in splendor, had they not been touched by darkness. Some may have descended from the same ancient stock as the Edain. Others, perhaps, were shaped by entirely different destinies. In his letters, Tolkien imagined distant civilizations in the East, with their own myths, their own tragedies, all unseen, unwritten. These races were not born evil. They were simply forgotten, overshadowed by the West, lost not through defeat on the battlefield, but through neglect in the telling of tales, the thread of decline. The fate of these lost peoples shares a common thread: decline. Some chose isolation. Others fell to corruption. Many were swallowed by the long silence of history. Middle-earth is a world where the light slowly fades. The elves are departing. The great kingdoms of men crumble. And with each passing age, the memory of what once was grows dimmer. These lost races, the Drúedain, the Petty-dwarves, the Avari, the Black Númenóreans, the forgotten men of the East, are not just footnotes. They are the cost of time's passing, fragments of a greater world, now reduced to legend. They remind us that even in fantasy, history is written by the victors, while the forgotten remain buried beneath the weight of silence and myth. So, which of these forgotten peoples stirred your imagination most? Let us know in the comments. And if wandering the hidden paths of Middle-earth lit a spark in your lore-loving heart, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more deep dives into Tolkien's legendarium. Until our next tale, may the stars shine on the road you walk. Thank you for watching, and farewell.